G'day, legends, and welcome to the Thursday Sesh on Celtic Down Under. I'm your host, Jared, and we have a full house. Joining me tonight are Willie, Jared, and Dan. How are you going, Willie?
I'm going pretty well, guys. A bit tired today, but just soldiering on at the moment.
There's two things I have to comment on straight away. Willie, that top is sexy as all hell. And Jared, before we get to you, let's see if we can get through a podcast without your dog falling off the couch this week. How you going, Jared?
I am going good. It feels like for ages since we've had a Celtic game. I'm used to these 2-a-week things.
Yeah, no, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Well, if anyone's tuning in and they want to see a Celtic game, they can always watch the women's team play. I think they're playing tonight, aren't they? Over there.
So depends where you are. 7:15 down there, and our time in Australia it is 4:15 a.m.
There you go.
On Celtic TV.
So if you want to get a Celtic fix, there's a way. Otherwise, you can hang on till the weekend. How you going, Dan?
Fantastic. Happy to be here and pumped to be part of a full house again. Been a minute, so it's nice to be here with all your beautiful faces.
And Willie, right?
Willie's the most beautiful one of the four.
We know. That's what it's all about. So we're at some comments here. Smell the glove. G'day, legends. Mickey Moynihan. Hello, boys and girls. McLaughlin saying, yeah, tonight, 7:15, Andrews Stadium. Andrew saying, g'day all. So, smell the glove, good point. Rather watch the Huns get beat. Yep, good point. So, yeah, we're going to, there's a little bit to talk about here. So, we're going to go on a bit of a tangent a bit later on. The episode's called Multi-Club Model because I want to talk about multi-club model ownership in football. So, we'll talk about that a bit later on before we preview the weekend's game. So, before we get to that, I just have a few silly questions here that I need to ask Jared and Dan, first of all. So, Jared, is Nicholas Kuhn the early favourite to win the Player of the Year?
In my early predictions, I already had him picked. Like everyone else is just behind.
I'm stirring you up here because we had another thing in our group chat we were chatting about for today's pod. And someone was saying Liam Scales is going to win the Ballon d'Or this year. So I need to ask you, Dan, is that going to happen? Or, is Nicholas Kuhn going to beat him to it?
I have full faith in the great Scale Nino. What a player. He's the best centre-back at the club at the moment on form. And I'm so here for the Red Curtain Renaissance. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, just had to do that to be a bit silly, guys. So in the comments, don't think we're actually being serious about that.
You didn't tell me that was a joke. I was 100% dead serious.
The ginger berets is on form, right?
The ginger
being serious like this early in the season and seeing how he started, I wouldn't be surprised if Engels ended up winning it.
What a start, huh? £11 million, absolute bargain.
Well, you've just jumped straight in, which is what my next question was going to be, which is about Arne Engels. So, like, after he made a comment in the media about how after witnessing the passion at Paradise on a Champions League night, he's saying that Celtic have nothing to fear from the yellow wall at Dortmund. So I wanted to know, first of all, boys, is that correct? And second of all, how much are we all loving Arne Engels? So I'll go to you first, Dan, since you started to like pop off about him there. You're probably halfway there to your climax. So off you go.
I'm halfway to something. What a player. Just cool, calm, great touch. I was so excited when we signed him and I started looking at him and I started, I watched a lot of tape and there was a few people that mentioned it. The stats weren't mind-blowing. Like you didn't look at what was on paper and say, oh, well, this guy's going to come in and be a huge difference maker, but we'll wait and see. But my confidence was there and I've got, no reason not to be super pumped with what we've seen so far from Big Arnie. He just looks cool, calm, collected. He slotted 2 penalties in, just wonderful fashion. We haven't had a Panenka penalty yet, but it feels like that's not too far away from him the way he's going. And, yeah, he's already come out, said Paradise is amazing, loves it. It was after 5 minutes, then we're sweet. I was going to say fuck the yellow wall, and then I was like, oh, hang on a minute, but it's 5:29 or something when I said it, so we're good. Fuck the yellow wall. He's pumped. He's doing it. He's all about it. So could not have asked for a better start to life as a Celt.
Jared, what are your thoughts?
I was ready to give him a couple of games to see how he came into the team, and if this is his couple of games getting into rhythm and getting used to the team, then I'm very excited. I'm not going to compare him to Matt O'Reilly, but he seems to be doing the sort of jobs that Matt O'Reilly was doing as well. Like he's defending, he's getting into areas. It seems like he knows what his job is. He knows what he's meant to be doing, and he's just getting into all the right areas. And yeah, I couldn't be more impressed with him at the moment, considering it's been 2 and a bit games.
So before I go to you, Willie, we've got comment here from McLaughlin where he's saying, wrong comment here, but about the weather over there, it's pretty bad. But yeah, Andrew Galea was saying, give Engels time, Scottish winter to come. I wouldn't be too worried about that because he's been playing in Bavaria before we signed him. So I think if he can handle Bavarian winter, he'll be able to handle Glasgow.
Yeah, I don't think we've got any worries about that.
And the Smell the Glove saying that's my worry about Kun, Scottish winter. That's what I said last year about Palmer. I'm waiting for Robert Gibson when he tunes in to put Palmer's a wanker in the comments like he always does. But last year, Palmer started well, got to winter, and he hibernated. And then when it started to thaw out a little bit, he played well at the end of the season. So I'm wondering if we're going to get the same again. But Willie, how much do you love Arne Engels?
The guy just oozes quality, right? He's just so calm, cool, and collected on the ball. Nothing phases him. He's got a bit of dig about him too, which is good to see. He's not frightened to leave his feet in a challenge, and he can mince it up with the big boys too. So yeah, I'm really excited about what we've got there. It seems to be a really, really good player. He's only 22. There's a lot to see with him, right?
Yeah, Arne Engels, what a guy. He seems like he comes in with what I'm loving most about him. His game's great. His positioning, the way he tracks back, box, all that stuff's well and good. But the thing I'm liking about him is that he comes in and he doesn't look like your typical 20-year-old when we signed him, 21-year-old. He's come in, and that first penalty situation where, Hatade grabs the ball and he gets it and he just looks cool, calm, collected, like, yeah, whatever, I got this. He just looks a lot more composed and experienced than his actual age. He's 21 now, but he goes about it like he's been playing professional football for the best part of a decade. So that's the thing that's impressed me the most, just the composure and the old head on his shoulders. So, yeah, really real good quality player for us. So, yeah, I think we've got ourselves an absolute legend there. And, yeah, let's see how he goes over the course of the season. So, comment section. I'm going to throw out something that is, if you have any questions, ask Jared anything is what we're going to have here. Ask Dan anything. Put a question in there that you want to ask Willie, each of us in particular, specific question that you want to hear from each of us. And by the end of the pod, I'll try and get through one for each of us. So chuck them in the comments. I'll flag them as we go. And yeah.
Can I just quantify before anyone asks? Sorry, I am married.
That would stop you.
Hey, Dan, the viewers have eyes, mate. So, Yeah, so just chuck some questions in there for us. We'll get to them later on. So here we go. This could get a little bit interesting. So comment section, let us know your thoughts on this as well. We're going to talk about the post from the boys that they put out on their social media channels earlier this week. So I'll bring up on the screen. I'll read through it. We'll discuss it. There's a lot to unpack in this whole post. And then we'll read some of the Twitter comments underneath the post that I've got on there for a bit of a laugh. And then we'll bring up your opinions on it. So the post was, after a few days digesting and analysing the performance of our section in the previous 2 matches, Slovan Bratislava and Falkirk, we think it is pertinent to share some thoughts with those who opt to stand with us in Block 122. The Slovan Bratislava game was fantastic and probably one of the best atmospheres at Celtic Park in years. Even before the team put in an incredible performance, there was an energy and excitement generated from the stands which hasn't been felt for a long time. There was a real infectious buzz about the place, demonstrated by pockets of fans all over joining in with ourselves in the Green Brigade. Compare and contrast with Valkirk, and it was like the life had been sucked out of the place before the game had even kicked off. We've heard that term European hangover, but this particularly in the first half, must be the come down of the century. Of course, there are obvious differences we cannot ignore. The Slovan match was a Champions League game under the lights, which unusually we have had a good chance of winning. The other was a League Cup on a Sunday afternoon against lesser opposition, supported by fans with 6 fingers and webbed feet. The team was excellent midweek, whereas Sunday was a white-knuckle ride for large portions of the game. There is going to be a big difference for the average fan, and that's completely understandable. However, our section was established and filled with fans who should actively support the team. While we can all be realistic and acknowledge that things cannot be forced and that level of support will differ depending on the prestige of the match, opposition, kickoff time, and on-field performance, none of these are reasonable excuses for the complete downing of tools, or worse, not showing up at all. If you want to benefit from having an area where you can stand with friends, shout, sing, swear, and genuinely be left alone to enjoy more freedom than is afforded to other areas of the stadium, then there are minimum expectations for doing so. Far too often now we are noticing people standing in silence with arms folded, hands in pockets, or with blank, slack-jawed, soulless expressions that have left us considering whether or not we should check for a pulse, call an ambulance, or activate the closet defibrillator. Bloody long word, that one. These sorts of things, along with leaving to beat the traffic, have a compounding demoralizing effect and zap the energy out of everyone around you. This also applies to those who migrate from other areas of the stadium to stand with or near us. You're also expected to play a part, and as far as we are concerned, everybody who wishes to do so is welcome. We do not moan about a bit of overcrowding. However, to put it simply, do not piggyback onto the group or section for status, to create social media content, or to simply use us and or the area as cover for anything else. Every Celtic game is important, and providing backing for the team from the minute they come to warm up until they head down the tunnel after the match is our most basic and fundamental remit. This is not a chore or forced labour. It's easy to judge our support on big nights like the Slovan Bratislava match. However, every Celtic game should be an occasion to showcase our pride in who we are, where we come from, and what we represent. We have the perfect platform to do this, but that starts with all of us playing our part as individuals. For the home matches in the near future, let's make a concerted effort to lift the energy and bring a level of consistency from the section that has been lacking. Use your voice, use your hands, put 100% effort into every song and action. Finally, while it is our group that has the responsibility for organising and administering the section with the club, it is not just for us. It is for everybody who chooses to stand there, and we welcome all suggestions for improvement from outwith and within. Thanks for your support, boys. So while I get my breath back, because that was like 3 and a bit minutes of solid reading, I'll go to you first. Will you just give us your thoughts overall on that, and then we'll get into specifics off the back of that.
Yeah, I found it a very self-effective statement. I get the point that they want to make Section 122 a sort of vibrant and bouncing area, just like the Green Brigade Section 110, but this is not the way to go about it. Okay, if people are migrating to their section and stand because it's active and it's noisy, then those people who are going there need to join in and be active. But to fire shots across the bow, fellow fans, it's whether it's in jest or not, it's simply not in good taste. So for me, whatever point they're trying to make, they've lost it. And what seems to be a veiled statement of cheap shots against fellow supporters, and this whole statement's completely missed its mark.
Dan, what are you thinking about that?
So let me preface what I'm going to say by saying I have been in active support areas, and it's different here in Australia where it's a very sanitized attempt to grow that active fan culture, particularly at football games. So I understand the frustration if you're looking around and there are people that are actively not participating. I don't think berating them or, taking a shot at them or putting out a statement is a constructive way to go about it. Your goal has to be to make people want to get involved and to build the atmosphere. And obviously, Champions League night, it probably happens a little easier for a number of reasons, particularly when you're, putting 5 past the Champions League opponent on match day 1. It's probably a lot easier to have that spontaneous and natural reaction. But I'm a little bit with Willie in that I think the statement, there's, a couple of cheap shots that probably don't need to be taken, particularly the one at the Falkirk fans. I don't know. I think we're a little bit above shitting on Falkirk fans. I don't know. I did read there was some Hun-like banter from some of the Falkirk fans, so that might have sort of driven that, and I won't go into that for obvious reasons, but I don't know. It just felt a little, honestly, in a 3-page statement, I got to the end of it and I wanted to do that sort of like, I'm really sorry that happened, or I'm really happy for you, whatever response, because it's like I'm not reading all that shit. Once you read it out for me, I was like, oh, okay, fuck. Go and sing. Don't spend your time worrying about what people around you are doing. Just fucking sing and create atmosphere and encourage people to get involved instead of shitting on people.
It's the sort of thing, Dan, where it's a TDLR, or whoever it is, or TLDR, too long didn't read. That's the one.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a long statement. It was. I'll go to you, Jared, for your thoughts, and then I'll jump in with mine because, could go off a little bit here.
I don't really have anything new to say.
Up, Jared.
Yeah, I don't really have anything new to say. I think it was long-winded and too much crap in there to actually. I think if he had a point, he kind of ruined it by just blabbing on and attacking other people. Stick to your point. And everything else, like Willie and Dan said, is pretty much what I would say. So no point repeating myself.
So for me, I can see a few different sides of this. And this is why I said there's a bit to unpack here. So Dan's already said the bit about the Falkirk thing. I was like, what's the point of that? But it's like, in general, I can understand what they're saying. If they are an active area, they're expecting people to come in that area and be active. 100% agree with that. As Maddie's saying here, they're 100% correct. But having been a member of an A-League club over here, Melbourne Victory, they have 2 active supporters, the North End and the South End, right? They've got different names I can never keep up because they change them all the time. South End is for the people who don't want to sing all the time, but want to stand up. They're the ones who stand up with their arms crossed watching the football, but they're still standing. They do the odd chant here and there. And then you've got the North End, which is full psychos who throw sand buckets at goalkeepers' heads and throw flares and absolute menaces, right? So
Right.
I originally sat at that end for years, but I was just next to them, and I was the first row behind them. So I understand how it all works. The thing for me that used to piss me off when I'd go to games when I sat near them was, don't tell me how to support my team. That's the key thing. And that's what pisses me off here with this post. The self-importance of whoever wrote that or whatever the group thinks of their role on match day. There's 60,000 people in the stadium. How many people are in that section, Willie? Do you know how many?
There'd be 500 to 750, depends.
Yeah,
Probably about 500.
Can you get us
750,
Can you get us a specific number, mate?
Come on, Willie. I thought you were a quick Googler. That's why I asked.
I just thought you knew each. I just thought you knew each section of the stadium seating capacity.
But
It's quite disappointing, actually.
But at the end of the day, like, what I'm getting at is, don't tell me to support my team. If you go with your elderly parents to a game and you've always sat in the next bay over from the boys, I know someone who does that. Their old mother and father who are in their 70s aren't going to have the leg strength and durability to be standing up, clapping, singing, doing all that for 90 minutes. But because they're sitting near them, and as they say later on, don't use us for social media and for whatever, and to try and build up a presence, get over yourselves. You're a supporters group within a stadium of 60,000. You're not all of the support on a match day. So that's what pisses me off about it, more than anything.
Just to piggyback off on what you said there, I think there's also a self-awareness. So someone like myself who, from 18 to 25, 26, was quite happy to sit in the active area, wanted to stand, wanted to sing, wanted to chant, wanted to throw beer showers, which is a Sydney FC thing when we score a goal. Loved it. There came a time for me when I'm like, no, I just kind of want to just sit and watch the football. Now I've got kids, I'm taking dates, I'm taking my wife. I just want to sit down and watch the football, and maybe I'll get in on a chant here and there, but I'm old, I'm fat, I don't want to be standing up all game. I'm quite happy to take a seat when things are a bit dull. I think needs to be a bit of awareness that when you've got a stadium of that many people, especially 60,000 people, everyone in there is going to approach watching a Celtic game in a different way. And to have this expectation that the way I do it is the way you need to do it, or fuck off, I think that's very short-sighted and very, it's not conducive to a positive atmosphere or to get people involved in what you're doing.
RJL7 is asking you this, Dan. Taking dates and your wife, you're a popular guy.
Well, they were dates. Then she became my wife, but still. I've been with the same woman since I was 19, so I'm certainly not popular in that way.
So I'll bring up some comments here for you. So Smell the Glove is saying, basically, if you want to stand and sing with the kids, then go to block 122 and join in. If you're fat, bald, grumpy, and old like me, sit nowhere near. Easy. Then McLaughlin's saying, I worked in Celtic Park myself for 20 years. I know for a fact Celtic security regret allowing the Green Brigade section, so there's little chance of that being extended. Andrew's saying, I'd rather things develop naturally, including active support. Yeah. Like, you don't need to have people with megaphones screaming at you in the next bay. Stand up. Like, at Victory, we have a stupid chant. It's stand up for the Victory, and they do that because they want everyone in the area to stand up. I'm like, don't tell me to stand up. I'm sitting 4 bays away now. Let me sit on my ass, drink my beer, and watch my game. I don't want to have to stand up. You pricks choose to do that.
I think I speak for everyone, though, when I say we could do with a lot less Melbourne Victory, full stop. It's an awful club full of awful people. So,
shut up, idiot.
I
haven't told you to shut up, Dan, in a while. So there you go.
I missed it.
And then McLaughlin's saying, from the people I spoke to, in security side of it, the manpower and hassle they need to put up with the section isn't worth it. Smell the Glove. Remember the atmosphere last season when Green Brigade were banned and the boys stayed away? Not the best. I get that. But as always happens at different clubs, one active support disappears. Someone always steps up into the void eventually. So if both were gone, something would happen. But yeah, Pegleg's saying, it is true that the atmosphere at Celtic Park and football grounds in general is subdued. The clubs these days are focusing on being family friendly. It's definitely a downgrade for the buzz. McLaughlin's also saying another thing, Celtic security allowed Green Brigade in the stadium to paint their banners the week leading up to games. So they can't say they weren't aware of what the Green Brigade is displaying. Robert Gibson, here he is. And he hasn't said Palmer's a wanker on his first message of the game, of the pod, so I'm disappointed, Robert. It used to take 10 minutes after a goal was scored in the old jungle to get back to your mates. Happy days. Yeah.
Now it takes 10 minutes after a goal scored to confirm that the goal was scored.
Yep. McLaughlin's saying, can only speak of my own experience, but I always hated having to enter the Green Brigade section. There you go, Jared. Virus totally ruined the celebration of scoring goals anyway. I can't bring that up, Andrew Galea, but I know exactly what that's all about.
We've all heard that one. I just liked up here at Sydney, Rockdale Illingdon, the Macedonian club. I realised that there's a stand of about 500 old men, and they're all making the same noise like a rock. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. They're all just in tune. I couldn't work out how they all knew to make the exact right, with the right inflection. So the good old days of ethnic-based football in Australia. But I have heard that particular heavy Croatian accented chant as well, Andrew.
Yep. RJL67, Robert, I'm old enough that I experienced proper old firms in the old jungle. Nowadays, there's no comparison. For starts, you don't get people pissing in your pocket. Had to bring that up for the last bit. But
it was raining some.
So, looking at it all, it's I'm going to go through some of the comments here from that post that was actually put up on Twitter now, because a few things like zap the energy that they said, it's actually sap of energy. A zap is giving you energy. A zap is taking it away. So that was put up there. F. Can said, new one for me, getting told when I'm allowed to leave the ground by people with no pubes. I tidied that up a bit for YouTube reasons. Pablo was saying, well, imagine thinking that you are so important that you can dictate how other paying supporters should conduct themselves while watching the team. Then you got another one, Timmy Hallett, saying, this is so patronizing, as if they are the standard bearers. Some folk like to watch the game in silence and focus. Some like to go mad for 90 minutes. It's almost like there are introverts and extroverts in our fan base. Imagine telling someone how to support your team. And then another one was like, we're the bestest fans and news are all rubbish if you don't join with us. Yeah, so this sort of thing is what I would expect from a certain banter years club, in my opinion.
Statement FC.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing, but anyway, you figure it out. So we'll go for a final thought on this topic. So I'll go to you first, Jared.
I think you should just buy your ticket, go watch the game, and do whatever you feel comfortable doing. Like, if you're yelling and faking it, then you're not going to have a good time. Just go and enjoy the game. And hopefully they give us lots to cheer about, and you can cheer naturally.
Willie?
Yeah, I mean, you pay the money. It's your day out. It's your experience. Just because you want to do something different to other people doesn't mean the way you're sampling it is the way they should be sampling it. So, yeah, each to their own.
Dan?
Yeah, look, not much more to add. Just to say, when you've got that, 60,000 people there, yep, some of you are young and getting on the piss, and getting on the piss before you get there, and having a sing and a song. But you've also got people that are taking kids. You've got people that are, having family experiences. It's such a different, different atmosphere for so many different people, and there are so many positives about it. We can probably just do without the sanctimonious dick swinging.
Yeah, pretty much you sum it up there. It's not a dick swinging contest. We're all going there to support our team. All support it however it suits you. And if anyone thinks I went in a little hard on the boys there, all I have to say is when a few people from their group have on Twitter previously sent me death threats, they can do one. So that's all I have to say. Anyway.
You're not singing?
What's that?
Were you not standing up and singing? Or
I wasn't.
No, they give him death threats because he was singing. You're
Yeah,
like,
pretty
shut
much.
up.
His arms weren't folded and his jaw was tense.
Hey, I have the voice of a drunken angel, okay? If everyone's drunk, it sounds good. If one person's not, it's just like, I don't know, if you put rocks in bloody someone's mouth and made them try to sing. Not good.
I think we going by the comments, we can all agree though that Mo's a fucking rat.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wash your mouth out after saying that name on here.
There we go. Hey, Robert, there he is. Judas was a pig for palm. Their self-love is off the charts. Wanker. There it is. That's the highlight of the show. We can all sleep nicely tonight knowing that Robert has stated that Palmer is a wanker on this podcast yet again. Love it.
He's not actually wrong though. I'm not gonna lie. I'm there with him at this point.
Smell the glove. The statement is, I suppose, from the type of person who tells you to cheer up. Anyone tells me to cheer up gets a size 14 and no more kids. My first thought when I read it as well there, smell the glove, was someone got the crayons out and started writing. Anyway.
I don't know why you would swap a pair of shoes for their kids.
Some days I'd swap my kids for a pair of shoes.
Child services, he's right there. And then he'll come in and he'll wear his communist hat and they'll just run away. Yep.
Yeah, they don't fuck with the Soviet Republic of Danistan here, mate.
Danistan's Victoria. You should know that by now.
He's gone now. He's gone.
Yeah, we're still dealing with it. Anyway, all right. So, main thing I wanted to talk about on this pod was I want to talk about the multi-club model that's happening at a lot of in football at the moment. So, the reason I wanted to bring this up is there's a lot of groups like the City Group, Red Bull, 777, Blue Corp or Blue Group, whatever they call it. And I was reading where the guys, the Freakins who own Roma, look like they're coming in and they're taking over Everton instead of going to 777. So I was reading that. And then the bunch of the comments under there was full of Huns saying, we should get bought out. We should get bought out. And I'm just like, we need to have a bit of a laugh at them. So I just wanted to go through a few things here. So if we're talking about, before we go through the actual groups that I've written up here, Dan, what's your thoughts on multi-club ownership in football? There's currently 160 clubs in multi-club ownership worldwide. 160 professional clubs.
Look, I think the most prominent one, the ones you've probably mentioned there, you've got the City Group, you've got Red Bull. It's probably an interesting time to be having this conversation, given the Court of Arbitration for Sport has just kicked off the case between the Premier League and City Football Group regarding some fairly sketchy fucking dealing. And that, I guess, is the major concern. I sort of came up with a pros and cons list when you posed the question, and looking at the cons, I guess that wouldn't so much be a concern for us as a Celtic Football Club, particularly if I guess your proposition is that Celtic goes out and buys a couple of clubs and becomes our own.
Well, that's something that I was actually thinking, like, as part of it, what I said in our group chat, which I was going to bring up, but Andrew got me here. Are we going to buy a club in England? So I thought it was kind of funny because when I was thinking about it, I'm like, the Huns are saying they want to be bought up. And I'm like, we've got how much money sitting in the bank? Do we go out and buy a club like a League of Ireland club? So they're getting bought into one where we're the premier club within it. And we buy a club, whether it's in, Holland or Germany or Ireland or whatever, or an A-League club or in America or something. You get a couple of feeders because you've got the guys from Brighton who have just come in to buy into Hearts. You've got the guys from Bournemouth who have just bought in, who own the Auckland FC, who's just coming into the A-League this season. They own the Vegas team in America, and they also own Hibs. They own a fair chunk of Hibs as well. So you're starting to see that multi-club thing coming into Scottish football, but a lot of the Scottish clubs are being that smaller team. But I'm like, do we want to be the big team in all of that?
Well, I certainly think there are benefits to that. It's it's almost like an economy of scale. You can pool resources, you can share scouting networks, you can develop player talent programs. The initial outlay obviously different, but if you've got green and white brand, so you buy Shamrock Rovers and
FC Groningen, that's the three that I would love for it to be.
Is it there's a Greek team, Panathinaikos, that play in green and white.
Yeah.
You could easily go down that path, and we've seen some of the city stuff. They Lille or Nice by a guy who then moves, never plays for them, goes out on loan, and is then sold to Manchester City. There's a lot of creative accounting in there, which is a little bit on the dodgy side, but from
Peter Lawwell's alley. Right.
Well, that's the biggest problem if you're going from a Peter Lawwell perspective, is the initial outlay to buy into the clubs.
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot about the Hearts deal, because it's different. It's not just coming in.
That one for a second, Dan.
Yeah.
I'll go to Jared and Willie to get their initial thoughts on how this works, and then we'll come back to your pros and your cons a bit more and get into that.
Yeah, no Jared.
Right. Well, my initial thoughts is I like the multi-team thing if you can do it. I don't agree with a European club being able to buy another European club if they're both going to be eligible for European competition. I think it's all right if you've got like an English club and they also own like an Australian club in like America, like clubs that aren't going to be facing each other in competitions, like getting to the Champions League, UEFA, like that sort of thing.
I've got lists ready to go for what you just said.
I actually did think about this a while ago, because you know how in Australia we're now, it's always just been the same clubs and that's been it, but now they're actually adding a League 2, and they're splitting up, so we are going to have like relegated clubs, or is that done? Is that not happening anymore?
That's
never
going
getting
happened.
That's
going to get off the ground.
Right.
There's some.
But
There's
I thought that would. I remember
corner.
when they were talking about it, I was like, this would be perfect for Celtic, because you could buy one of those like League 2 clubs in Australia for less than like what Scales is worth, and then get them up into the A-League.
25 million, you reckon?
Yeah, less than that.
Less than 25 million. Okay.
But yeah, I thought about that at the time, but I haven't heard anything about it since, so I'm not sure if it's still going ahead. Apparently, Dan said it's not.
Basically, what they were saying with that, Jared, is they were going to do it. Expressions of interest, there was about 30 clubs that expressed interest, but they had to put a certain amount of money up to hold to go into the second tier, and then they'll be in the second tier for like 3 or 4 years, and then it was going to be gradual. The winner goes up till you get to like the 16 teams in the top flight, and then relegation promotion is. But then the problem off the back of that here in Australian football with the A-League was you've got people paying franchise fees, like the guy who set up Auckland, who's spending 10 million or whatever to set the club up. His club could get relegated in 2 years. So that's where if there's no return on investment or guarantees that they're going to not be relegated, then no one's going to want to invest. So that's where the issue happened.
Yeah, my mate was a head coach for the Brisbane City, so I was paying attention, and then he left, and so I stopped paying attention when all that happened.
Look, I spent 6 years working for a team in the second tier in New South Wales here. The other problem you've got is that you're relying on, of those 30 clubs, a bunch of people to come together and work together who have spent the last 50 years hating each other. And there's it's a very small community with a lot of petty rivalries and a lot of other stuff that, look, is frankly quite boring on a Celtic podcast. It's, there is a lot of...
Let's go to Willie.
So I was trying to this is,
Because Willie's been sitting there for about the last 10 minutes quiet, and it's getting late in New Zealand, so we better let him talk for a bit so he doesn't fall asleep.
No, there's not much more you can add. I mean, it certainly seems to be the modern approach to footballing. Like Man City have got 13 partners across the world, and from the outside, it just seems the chief benefit of this is just sort of to try and corner emerging talents from across the globe. I know a lot of these groups, whether it's Eneos, 777, the Man City ones, they all have a Belgian club in there. I think 8 of the Jupiler Pro League are all part of these multi-clubs because their work permit system, it's easier to get a work permit in Belgium than it is to get one anywhere else in Europe. So if you have somebody from Brazil who doesn't meet the criteria to come into the UK, I think you have to be capped so many times by your international team before you're allowed to come and play in the UK, or you have to be you have to hold a permit in a European state. They can get into the Belgian league, they can play there for a couple of seasons and then transfer across via that path. It just makes it easier to transition players from one side of the world to the other. It is something that you would look at and say, yeah, this needs to be the way forward. It seems to be the way forward, but how would you go about approaching it? Because you need a good scouting system. You need sort of money to invest in the other teams as well. Celtic would have to be the top of the tree. You know what I mean? Are you going to buy Shamrock Rovers? Are you going to go to one of the Balkan states, say Slovenia, and try and buy Celje or Domžala or someone like that and make them a feeder club out there? But it all costs a bit of money. And for me, we haven't even really got a decent scouting network at Celtic at this moment in time. You know what I mean? To have one that's going to be set up for multiple teams, I think it's a step too far at this moment in time, but it is certainly something that they should certainly put the irons in the fire and see what they can produce. But we need to get our own house in order first, if I'm honest.
Like, for me, looking at it, Willie, like what you're saying makes perfect sense, because the only reason I said that about us is I just think it's kind of funny. Like, if the Huns are talking about let's get bought out by someone else, I was just like, well, we could afford to be the main one. So I'm just saying that for comedy purposes above all else, guys. So I don't think it will actually happen, but you can understand why it would happen, because, as they're saying, you can identify players in leagues, because if you've got a team over there, you're going to know it's the same sort of thing where we had with Ange when he came in, and he knew the Japanese talent that would work well in his system, and then was able to get them in cheap and get players across to your club. That's the sort of thing that could work for us, whether it's if we had a team in the US, if we had a team in Brazil, if we had a team in Argentina, or had a team in Australia or something like that. It would help you a bit more with your identification and your scouting of the levels of these players that you're bringing in, so we don't end up in this section here like Andrew Galea saying that Man City got 2 million out of Celtic for Tilio. So we don't end up in another one of those situations. But yeah, well, I'm going to go through some of the main ones. So I didn't even mention Ineos because I only got 2 main clubs in theirs, but the City Football Group, Jared likes them having teams in different areas. So in Europe, they have 5 teams. They have Man City in England, Girona in Spain, Lommel in Belgium, Troyes in France, and Palermo in Italy. I never knew Palermo was part of it until today. In the Americas, they have New York City, Montevideo City Torque in Uruguay, Bahia in Brazil, and Club Bolivar, which is just a partner club that don't own the whole thing, in Bolivia. And then in Asia and Australia, they have Melbourne City, Yokohama F. Marinos, Shenzhen City in China, and Mumbai City in India. So absolutely bunch of clubs there. Red Bull they got 5 teams. So they got RB Leipzig in Germany, New York Red Bulls in USA. In Brazil, they've got 2 clubs, Red Bull Bragantino and Red Bull Brazil. And then in Austria, they've got Red Bull Salzburg. But then Red Bull, along with the San Francisco 49ers, also own shares in Leeds. So I didn't know that until today.
That's how Jesse Marsh got the job with Leeds United. All came through the Red Bull tie-in.
Yep. And then if you go
just on that particular thing, when you talk about partner clubs and part ownership, I think a lot of that is just the investment portfolio idea of diversifying your risk and saying, well, look, we own these clubs. They're our main asset. We'll build it. We'll buy a chunk of Leeds, and if they get in the Premier League, then that'll be a nice income stream. And so I think there's a difference between the club ownership and the investment where you're buying a chunk just to basically offset your risk in your other clubs.
A funny one for me is like what you're saying there about offsetting your risk is Udinese in Italy and Watford in England. Those two teams have the same owners, the Pozzo family, and they just constantly just go players back and forward like this to each other all the time. It's ridiculous. There's a group, Blue Corp, which is Chelsea. They've just bought Racing Strasbourg in France. These are the guys the Huns keep saying, oh, there's Todd Bowley and his mob should come and buy Rangers because they wear blue. They're currently looking into Schalke in Germany. Germany has the 50+1% has to be fan owned. So when we're talking before about, say if Celtic was to come up and do that green and white group like we're talking about, and you bought Shamrock Rovers, you bought FC Groningen. If you wanted to be a minority one in Germany, you wouldn't be able to get into Wolfsburg, who are green and white because it's owned by Volkswagen. So realistically, you look at Werder Bremen and you'd be like, let's buy a chunk of them as well. But at the same time, I don't think that would happen. But, that's something a bit silly. And then 777 Partners, here's an interesting one for you. These guys don't own any club 100%. They're purely an investment mob, and they have Sevilla. They've got like 90% of Sevilla. Genoa, they're the two clubs they own the most of. Then it's Vasco da Gama in Brazil and Standard Liège in Belgium. The next rung down is Red Star Belgrade and Melbourne Victory. I like that those two clubs are linked together in this group because, my in-laws would be happy with that. And then Hertha Berlin in Germany. So, as you can see, there's a lot of clubs with a lot of, things are spread out everywhere. But, yeah, I just think could be worth doing long term. But, Dan, what's your the country of Nottingham Forest owns Olympiacos. So, Dan, you got your pros and cons list that you mentioned. So do you want to go through them in a little bit more detail for us? What are the cons?
Yeah. I'll just clarify before I do that there are, I guess, a number of reasons that you would have a multi-club model. So one is, as you mentioned, your player development, your player identification. You've got the rules around Europe, and I think they're worldwide through FIFA now, where you can't transfer minors for fees and that you can't give them inducements to travel across international borders. So, for example, instead of, going over to Japan and pinching a talented 14-year-old kid and giving his mum and dad a job in the club or something, you would have them play in your Japanese feeder club. That is one, the talent identification, the ability to transfer is one side of it. The other is the development of your ability to on-sell players. So you're basically pooling players. Look at Chelsea right now. I mean, they've got 500 players in their fucking first team squad on 10-year contracts. Those guys, and I think the model there, and look, it's hard to second guess what Todd Bowley wants to do because I'm not sure Todd Bowley knows what Todd Bowley wants to do all the time. But it looks like that they're locking in those long-term assets as almost like the football equivalent of a term deposit where I've got this asset for a long time. It should mature, and there's so many other factors into it. It's fucking ridiculous if you ask me. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify those. For me, the cons, the biggest one is the competitive integrity. You talked about it being in both clubs in Europe or multiple clubs in the same governing bodies and jurisdictions. There are rules around, well, if you do have two clubs in Europe, you can only hold a certain percentage stake in one. So you would, I guess, in theory, have a inducement to have a main club. suck shit if you're the minor club, like Nice for Ineos. You know, they come in, do all this and that, and then they go and buy Manchester United and move on. So to me, the significant issue there is potential for conflict of interest, particularly if you've got clubs in the same leagues or tournaments, so Champions League, Europa League, whatever. Regulatory challenges, existing regulations can often limit how multi-club ownership operates, especially financial dealings and transfers between them. So there are crackdowns now on clubs between the two. So the transfers are going to be a little bit different. Man City still seem to get away with it, whereas I know Man United all of a sudden were unable to sign Jean-Claude Todibo from Nice. You know, whether those rules have come in time or not. Identity and traditional risks, maintaining the unique identity and traditions of each club. I know it wasn't a multi-club thing, but when Cardiff were bought out, 10, 15 years ago, and all of a sudden the owner wanted to change them to playing in red because red was a luckier color or some stupid shit. If you're falling, if you own a football club, ideally, you would be doing the best to improve that club and to make that the best asset you've got. But if you've got multiple clubs, you're going to say, well, actually, I want them to all play in green and white. So I couldn't buy Wolfsburg or Bremen, so I bought Augsburg and changed their colours because fucking YOLO.
We saw that over here, Dan, with Melbourne City. They were Melbourne Heart before that. They wore red and white stripes. And then
100%.
City bought them out, changed them to Melbourne City. They had to pay out a local junior club here, who was also originally called Melbourne City. And then they changed them to the light blue, the City blue. And then Sydney FC cracked the shits because they're the Sky Blues. So it was a bit of a I thought you would have brought that up, but you're slipping, man. You're slipping. What's going on here?
I'm trying to limit myself on the number of A-League comments in the show each week, so because I know it's not it's not what we're here for. But you're right, and in that instance, Melbourne Heart had only been around for a fairly short period of time, particularly in the the grand scheme of things.
4 years.
Yeah, about 5 minutes. So if you're followed a club that's 100 years old and your grandfather and your grandfather's father, and then all of a sudden you change, there's going to be a little bit more attachment to it than that. But there were definitely people that were really upset that they were losing their club. They get a third kit.
Happened with Red Bull Salzburg.
Yeah, 100%. So if you're lower down the totem pole, the opportunity that you're going to cop that sort of stuff is, I think, a lot higher. I did sort of point out the relegation risks as well, financial stability and operational stability. If you're in the bottom of the pile, you might be the one wearing sort of more of the costs and seeing more of your players moved on to balance books, or your better players could be moving to the main club. And just market saturation. It's happening everywhere. You went through them. You were even naming ones that I hadn't noted down earlier as well. It seems like there's 1,000, football groups, but then you've got the investment funds and the hedge funds and the financial guys that are taking cuts to, cash in on transfers down the line. Football is a money business. So that's going to attract people like that as well. So, yeah, I thought they were the main cons that I sort of came up with.
I'll bring up some comments and then we'll get to the positives, okay?
Yeah, sure.
So, Smell the Glove. Malky Mackay's mate bought Cardiff, turning from blue to red, and the fans went mad back to blue, which is what you were talking about. So, we've got Andrew Galea had a question. Are we going to buy a club in England? And then he said, buying a club in England, moving that club up the pyramid is a sneaky way of getting us into the EPL.
Wouldn't work, like.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, Man City might be for sale if court goes really badly. They might be in the 4th or 5th tier, but
yeah. Then you've got RJL67. I hear Poundland are looking to buy in the Sevco to knock down Ibrox and build the biggest Poundland store in the world. Smell the Glove said Tony Bloom looking to invest 10 million in the diets. And then Andrew also said Brighton buying Hearts. Heavy Vibes, buy another club, buy more top players for Rodgers to work with. Colin Sweeney, first thing to do with money is buy someone to replace Palmer.
I can't believe that's not Robert Gibson.
Yeah, RJL67, I'd rather invest in my own club. I'm afraid you'll never see the hoops in the Premier League, and supporting another club just because they're owned by my club doesn't work for me. Strangely, the doctor multi-club system sounds a bit cheaty, doesn't it? And then Andrew, I know why you're saying this. I look at a club like Bohemian Prague, good league in Czech, and good place to develop our players. Valid point. Bohemian Prague are white. They also have a kangaroo in their logo, so that's why you've done it, mate. I know what it's all about. So,
How the hell does that happen? Just side note, how the fuck does that happen?
Apparently the kangaroo got out of their zoo years ago, and that's what it got out, and yeah, it had something to do with that. It was caught by their stadium or something. I remember hearing about it, had a good chuckle. So, Willie, you got anything talk about the cons there before we go into the positives? Or
I
Jared?
think for me, the biggest con would be that UEFA is going to take a closer look at this soon. They're going to say, hang on a second here, this is akin to the third party ownership of players that happened in South America. You saw it when Carlos Tevez went to Man United. And him and Mascherano, it turned out that the way that they were owned and loaned to Man United by an agency group was all wrong. And they clamped down on that big time. And I think that UEFA might just take a look at this and say, do you know what? We don't like this. There's something just not right about this. We're going to wash our hands of it. And they might clamp down on this too. But then the business would just say, like when Red Bull Salzburg met Red Bull Leipzig in the Europa League, they just says, well, we're actually two separate entities of Red Bull. We're not actually owned by the same people, and they'll just prove that they're, like I say, separate entities. But I just think the biggest downfall will be UEFA will take a proper review of this very soon.
Just to jump off the back of what Willie said, I think when we talk about the investment groups that are coming into football or are in football, I think this is the next level after the crackdown on the third-party ownership, because they can't go into South America now and give the kid $5 and a new pair of boots and get 50% of his transfer fee when he goes to Europe now.
Yeah.
The idea is that they go into that next step. They're basically just looking for where there's less restriction and less regulation. So UEFA will 100%, there'll be crackdown, and then they'll find the next way to make a quid.
They're basically saying that this team's got 4 good players. I want to buy all of them. Well, you can't buy the players. Well, I'll just buy the club. You know what I mean? It's just the next level of that, because the money's so high in football now. You know what I mean? You're not talking millions anymore. You're talking billions.
So I think we need to let Jared have something to say, just so he can check he's still awake and with us here, because he's barely even moving.
He loves football finance chat.
Just listening to Dan go on and on about his cons, I was thinking, did you write a letter complaining about fans not cheering enough? That was about as long-winded as that.
I did write my very first letter to the editor of a newspaper yesterday, so I'm at that point in my life. But
Penthouse magazine?
No, local newspaper. Not even that cool.
Oh.
I was going to say it's his.
I don't really have much thoughts on it. I gave my thoughts. I don't think a club should be allowed to own them when they can play in the same competitions, no matter what. I don't care percentage of ownerships. Just have them different parts of the world. Bad.
Okay. Dan, you have 2 minutes for the positives, and then we get on to the preview and the game on the weekend.
Works for me. Financial strength. Multi-club ownership allows for economies of scale. Clubs to negotiate better sponsorship deals, share resources such as scouting, player development. Financial stability can obviously significantly benefit smaller clubs within the network. Player development model creates a pathway for young talent, facilitating loan agreements, transfers between clubs. This approach helps maximize player potential. Global reach. This was the other one that I found a lot of interest in. Owning multiple clubs ensures access to various markets and fan bases, enhancing revenue opportunities through increased merchandise and sponsorship. So instead of buying 3 or 4 Japanese players, we buy a Japanese club and 2 are there regularly and all this and that. Knowledge sharing. Clubs under the same ownership can exchange best practices in areas like fan engagement, operations, stadium operations, academy development, physiotherapy, whatever. And the one that I came back to was more the financial investors, risk diversification. Owning clubs in different leagues or countries, investors mitigate risk associated with poor performance or financial instability in a single club. So you're not, tied to the fortunes of the one club so much. They're not so much benefits that I'm looking at from a Celtic point of view, because couldn't be fucked with a Celtic to do this or not. But
Yeah, fair enough. All I have to say is, everyone, Dan is our resident communist on the Thursday Sesh, and he's going through like financial reasons and all this sort of stuff. So,
well, see,
I'm just having a laugh at his comment here.
ideally, I think the state should own all the clubs and allocate resources accordingly. But I won't go into that.
Creating your commune, aren't you?
All right, so I'm going to bring up a couple of comments quickly. So Andrew's saying the Bohemians toured Australia in 1926 were gifted 2 kangaroos to take back to Prague. There's your answer.
Beautiful.
Strange Love the Doctor. Salzburg, birthplace of Mozart, should have its character represented by a proper football club, not a marketing strategy. RL77 Pros, buying a whole club would give the board a collective heart attack. So yeah, we'll I think we'll leave that there, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that when we know what's going on with the whole 115 charges FC and all that sort of stuff soon enough as well. So on Saturday at McDermott Park, we're playing St Johnstone. My first thing I had here, and I had to remove it, was, will we see a familiar face in the dugout? But he's withdrawn from the position, so it won't be Bruni in the dugout. So we'll skip that one and go, Willie, what's your general thoughts heading into the game?
General thoughts is St Johnstone are in pretty bad form. They're in turmoil. They've no manager. 1 draw in their last 5 matches. No wins, no clean sheets. Yeah, I just can't see anything other than a Celtic win. I think we should pass it to Gerard. He's not had much to say tonight, so I think we should give Gerard this section.
Yeah, this season they've had 1 win, 1 draw, and both have been away. And the draw was last week to Ross County. So not really something special to write home about. Yeah, Bruni decided he would rather stay with Ayr, who are on top of the championship at the moment. So we might see him come up here sometime soon. And we should be back to full strength with maybe just not CCV, but I don't think we should really have too much troubles.
So I'm looking at it going, St Johnstone are currently in 10th. 1 win, 1 draw, 4 losses. Goal difference is -3. So realistically for them, I think the biggest thing going in their favour is addition by subtraction with Levine being out the door. But we'll still give them a good I'm going to do it, a good Rogering. There we go.
Ooh,
I understand that how you want, whether it's a pun or it's actually saying we're going to, give them a good shagging. So either way, think of that what
and
you
we
will.
have a chance to break that record if we keep another clean sheet.
Yeah,
We've equaled it now. We can break it on this weekend, and good chance as well.
So, Jared, what will be the key areas of focus for us to win the game?
Well, I'm pretty sure CCV is not going to be playing. So it's going to be probably Trusty. Let's say Trusty comes in because Welsh was shit. It's going to be like that back 4 playing well together, not letting fast breaks. Because I'm pretty sure if we go with the midfield that I think we're going to be going with, the ball's not going to be coming past there too often. So it's just going to be, the back 4 with a new player, getting some time together and communicating. Because, I'm not worried about any other part of the field. There's
CCV in a moon boot yesterday. So, yeah, he doesn't look like he'll be playing this weekend.
It would be silly to play him as well, because with a midweek game if we wanted to play him in that.
Exactly. So I was going to say to you, Dan, do you think we'll be back at full strength this weekend after rotating the squad last weekend against Falkirk? Or will we be treating this as a dress rehearsal for the upcoming Champions League game against Dortmund? What are your thoughts on that?
I think my opinion may have changed after the Falkirk games. Going into the Falkirk game, I was really big on, make 10, 11 changes if you want. Who gives a fuck? It's the League Cup. Get, minutes in legs, see what we've got. But given how poor a lot of those second stringers looked. I don't want to, I don't expect, what I want's irrelevant. I don't expect a hell of a lot of changes. I don't think we'll see CCV. You're right. I wouldn't mind seeing someone like Luke McCowan start in the midfield, potentially start Adamita. That's about it for me. You're not going to sit here and say you want to start Palmer on the left or Yang or anything and you're just not going to do it. Start, close to your best, get a couple of goals up. We should, by rights, we should pump them. I think we've not lost in our last 29 games against St Johnstone or something. Get a couple of goals to the good and then, take off whoever. Even if you want to give Calmac a rest or whatever, feel free to take someone off before we go take on Borussia Dortmund. But I wouldn't be rushing anyone back if there's any concerns over fitness, that's for sure.
So AR's saying not too many changes. Look at Sunday. For me, I'd be making quite a few changes because I'd be wanting to go back from all the changes we made from the Bratislava game, bring those guys back in. So there's going to go back towards a full strength team. So you're going to want to have Scales in. You're going to want to have Alistair Johnson if he's fit and his back's okay. You're going to want to have Greg Taylor in there. Then you're going to want to have Engels. Is Hatade going to start, or is it going to be Bernardo? Is it going to be Calmac, or is he going to give him a rest and put McGowan in? So there's going to be quite a bit of change. Do we play Ida in this game and then keep Kyogo for Dortmund, where it's a big wide open field? That's what I'd be doing. So there's a whole heap of different scenarios. So we could see quite a few changes from our last game, but it's actually going to be bringing us back to our strongest squad. That's why I was saying, is it going to be a bit of a dress rehearsal? We're going to get back to, I want to try and get a good 60, 70 minutes of Engels and Bernardo playing together. So they've got that experience before we go to Dortmund.
Yeah.
I want to see a bunch of playing time before we go to Dortmund in case he's required.
Yeah, that'll work for me. Look, honestly, an Engels, Bernardo, McCowan midfield would be fine by me. I think looking at the Falkirk game as well, they really came at us. They had nothing to lose. It's a cup tie. They're away from home. They're the lower division side. They came and had a crack. St Johnstone aren't going to do that. They're going to sit back. They're going to try and contain. They're going to try and not to get pumped. Let's be honest. So it's going to be a different challenge. It's going to be back to trying to break down a low block, break down a side that's going to try and stay as compact as possible. So I don't think we're at the same risk of copping a goal that we were against Falkirk, that's for sure.
Yep. So the next thing is, if you were the manager, what changes to the squad would you be making? Because I've just rattled off mine. And what's your expected starting lineup? So we'll go to you, Willie.
I would play Ralston at right back, and I think you might see a surprise outing for Nawrocki at centre half. I don't think they'll risk CCV in any way, shape, or form before the Dortmund game if he's not 100% fit. And okay, Trusty's a 6 million defender, but he's left-footed and he plays predominantly on the left side, and so does Scales. So we saw last week Welsh didn't work at the right side of centre back, so he might give Nawrocki a run out just to see how it's going to go. But I fully expect the front five of Kyogo, Mieda, Kuhn, and Bernardo and Engels behind them, Kalmar anchoring that, and Scales and Taylor on the left side of the defence with Schmeichel on goals. I think St Johnstone, from what I've seen, they've been playing a 3-5-2, so they're going to try and flood the midfield and keep it really tight with the wing backs sort of tucking in to help out. So it would be a 5-3-2 3-5-2 sort of formation, maybe just try and hit long balls whenever they can to try and frustrate us. But I can only foresee a complete pasting coming on Saturday.
You know what's funny, Willie? I completely forgot about Nawrocki.
Yeah, I was going to say who?
Completely forgot he was there because, got Welsh, you've got Trusty, you've got CCV, you've got Scales. Looked at those four. I completely forgot that Welsh is actually our fifth choice centre back, and Nawrocki should be ahead of him. So yeah, good shout. And Jared, what would you do?
Definitely starting Taylor and Scales. That second position, I've got Trusty at the moment, but if it was Nawrocki, I wouldn't be bothered. Welsh, no. Like, he had a chance and was absolutely terrible. Norowski looked a lot better when he came on as well. His passing was way more direct. And yeah, I agree. Like Ralston can start on the right. I'm pretty happy with that because apparently AJ has a niggling back injury. So if that's still kind of there, and we want him to play Dortmund, then I don't know if we'd risk him. In midfield, Kalmak, Bernardo. I think Bernardo should be the starting midfielder going forward. So I would start with him and Engels, get them some time together in at least the first half, because I would start that against Dortmund. And then up forward, Maida, and I would start with Ida and Kun. I think Ida is our more on-form striker at the moment in the league, but I do think we should start with Kyogo midweek.
So, Smell the Glove has said Casper, AJ, Trusty, Scales, Taylor, Kalmak, Engels, McGowan, Kun, Ida, Maida. I'm pretty similar to that, except I'd have the Bricky in for AJ. And yeah, I'd once the job's done, get Kalmak off. And yeah, I like the idea of starting Ida against them, because if they're going to be playing that 5-3-2 that becomes a 3-5-2 when they're in attack, it's going to be pretty crowded in the middle. So get the big man on where he can batter people, and looks like he's getting a bit of a swagger about him where he's starting to score some goals and that too. So yeah, as Andrew's saying, Ida had a good 2-minute spell. Let's get him to do it a bit more.
He was terrible in the first half though until the starters came on.
Yeah. Do you blame him? That was such a disjointed team. Dan, what's your starting lineup?
Yeah, look, I'd go much the same as you. I think Ida up front. I would be starting Kuhn and Kalmak, but I'd be quite happy to take them both off for Forrest and McGowan fairly early if things are looking good, even halftime sub if you're 2 or 3 up. I just don't, they're Rolls-Royce players, quite happy for them to sit as much as we can. Beyond that, yeah, I would probably start with Ralston as well, even though I thought he was pretty poor against Falkirk, just because there's no reason to run AJ out with back and knee or whatever he's, minor complaints that he's got. And, Casper in goals, because we're just not going to, no one's given Bainey a run. And I think Sinicillo might be injured or under a cloud, so he's missed some training, I'm aware, as far as I'm aware. So it's going to be Casper. That's fine.
Yep. So Strangelove the Doctor's saying Casper, Via, Trusty, Rocky, Bricky, Kalmak, McGowan, Bernardo, Young, Ida, Forrest. That's a interesting lineup. We're talking about Bricky, who's saying that he struggled on the weekend. Well, when you're kind of having a cover for Welsh so much, that's why you're out of position. So, and
I thought the same could be said for Valle. It's a lot different game playing with Maeda in front of you than fucking Palmer.
Yep, we said that on Monday about him as well. Yep, so agree. And the other thing is, Ida struggled in the first half because he had no service from the wings.
100%.
So once he had Ida come on, not Ida, couldn't come on, look what happened. So, yeah, I can understand that. So I'll bring up a few comments here. Smell the Glover saying, start McGowan on Saturday. Andrew saying, hope we play the best available 11 to start the game, get in front, bring on 5 subs. Robert Gibson saying they are shite, smash them 7-0. RL77, rest Colmack for McGowan. Smell the Glove, get the 3 points. 1, then worry about Dortmund. Andrew saying these subs need game time in case we need them. RJL67, get the job done, then take the big hitters off and wrap them up for next week. Andrew saying Bernardo will probably play in Dortmund. RJL67, still need to keep our best players fresh up to speed, so get a run, get the job done, then get them off. AR saying kill the game by halftime, get the big hitters off. I think we're pretty much all in agreement here. So, Willie, what's your score prediction?
I'm going to go for a conservative 6-0.
Jared?
3-0.
Dan?
I was going to say 6, so I'm going to wind mine a little bit more conservative and say 7-0.
I'm
With
gonna
Liam Scales to score.
I've actually got Scales down for the header here too.
Yeah, I was gonna say a nice lazy 5-0, and we'll be up like 3-0 at half time and take a bunch off. So yeah, we've got a couple of the comment questions that I asked for early on. We'll quickly get to them, and then we'll final thought and get out of here. So McLaughlin saying, if Ida's worth 9.5 million, what's Kyogo worth when he's in full? If Trusty's rated at 6 million, what would you rate Scales worth? So let's just go, what's Kyogo worth? I'll say 18 to 20 for Kyogo if he's fully fit. And Scales is worth £35 million. There you go. I just want the comments. That's an engagement comment. Jared?
Kyogo, I'd go 15, 17. And Scales, like we've had this discussion, I said Scales I think is worth more to us than we would actually get for him. I'd probably say like 5 million.
Be like with when Starfelt left, where we got pretty much what we paid for him back, but his on the pitch was worth more than that.
Yep.
Dan, Willie, what do you think for Kyogo?
15. He's 29, got shoulder dramas.
15 to 20 million for me for Kyogo, right?
For Scales?
Priceless.
Priceless. 2.5 million, and you can have him for an after dinner speech.
Smell the gloves saying $1 billion.
It's adjusted for inflation.
Yep. And
Put a
then
tariff on it.
Maddie had a
200%.
question. Out of all the second string players from the Falkirk game, who would make the bench for the Champions League games? Well, Trusty will, the Bricky will, and
Valle.
yeah, and Valle. Yep, that's pretty much about it that I can come up with off the top of my head. What do you boys reckon? Anyone else?
Well, also Ida, and one that and Forrest, because he's a second stringer that played. But also, I think Bernardo was a second stringer. He started this game, and I think Bernardo has earned a spot in the starting lineup, not on the bench.
So Hatate then.
I also think Young has leapfrogged Palmer for a place on the bench to come off the bench.
Sad state of affairs when you're saying that, isn't it?
If you're looking up the depth chart and seeing Yang Hyun Jin, maybe football's not your thing.
And here's another one for you, McGowan. Yep, because he wasn't there on the weekend, but yep, he will be there as well.
So annoyed he was cup tied.
Yep.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for tuning in. If you haven't done so, hit the like button on this on YouTube and on the podcast app. Hit the subscribe button. Help us build it up. We're about 100 people away from the 4,000 target we've got for this season on YouTube. So help us get there. If you're already subscribed, tell a mate. Let them subscribe too. Or steal your wife's phone or your partner's phone and subscribe for them. Because it's good fun. Torment them. We've got some final thoughts. So I'll give you boys a bit of a think. Everyone, my final thought is this. Marco Tilio does exist, and he's not much taller than my 13-year-old nephew. Willie?
I hope you all enjoy your weekend. One of my mates has invited me to a thing called a freak-off party. I'm not sure what that's all about, so we'll give it a go, see what happens.
Pack the baby oil, mate.
Full body baby
Oh, you don't
oil.
need to. There's plenty already there.
William baby oil. Jesus Christ.
We just had about 4,000 ladies join the stream.
That's behind the paywall.
Yeah, it's on the Patreon.
Like we're baby oiling our Willie.
Jared, you got a final thought?
I'm going to have my final thought the same as we opened with a reminder about the women's Champions League game. if they're already up 1-0, this is the second leg, and if we win this is the first time ever that they'll be into the final 16 of the Champions League. Just like keeping it warm for the men as well. So good luck to the girls. Hopefully they can get it done.
Nice. And Dan?
Just a personal message to the bastard that stole my car last week. Just bring it back. I got woken up.
CD back.
I got woken up at 4 a.m. last Friday by police who thought I may have been driving my vehicle in a pursuit. And obviously, once they woke me up and I wasn't, we deduced that someone had stolen my family car. So even if you could just drop the pram and the car seats back, that would save me about $2,000. So yeah, there's a lot of bastards in the world. Lock your cars and put them in the shed and double lock them, because there are thieving Huns and bastards everywhere.
And Dan had an alibi. He was out with his date and his wife.
We'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.